Right, good afternoon everyone. We're back into our Friday. You know what, I feel like I'm hosting a radio program here, but we're back on a Friday afternoon, 12:30 Facebook live session where we are asking, we are, I'm right here in my office, so my colleagues are just working over the other side of the room. Now, we're right back here, and then today we are going to explore further about overseas investing. So every Friday, 30 minutes, I'm just going to spend my time, whether I'm in Singapore office or whether I'm overseas, I'm just going to spend my time being here to answer some of the questions that you might have about investing overseas, anywhere from to Singapore, from Malaysia to Australia to UK, even to different part of the world, to the Europe side, or even within Asia itself. So feel free, if you are watching this or if you're going to watch this later, every Friday, if you've got any questions about investing overseas or investing, into real estate properties, feel free to post questions on our website whenever the announcement goes out about this Facebook live session, and we will try to answer the questions as much as we can. And at this point in time, I don't see a lot of questions coming through yet. It's only our second session. We need to get the word out about more of these sessions that happening, and I think we will be able to get more of you to participate as time goes, right? Okay, today we are going to talk a little bit about Brisbane. Now, you must have heard about, if you are active in the investment space, if you are active in Australia property investment, or if you are active about, the international markets, you must have heard about what rumors or caught wind about things happening in Brisbane. Brisbane used to be a sleepy city, used to be the poorer cousin of Melbourne and Sydney, but today it's undergoing a lot of change. But before we understand Brisbane, there is the need to first understand a few other things, and hopefully over this session I'll be able to explain that to you. We first engaged into the Brisbane market in sometime 2008. That was very early stage. We were engaging the market at a point in time where we spoke to a few developers, and the developers were not even ready to develop in some of the areas that we were looking at. But that's how early we have been in the Brisbane market, and over the years we've built quite a bit of expertise as well as connections in there, and and a lot of familiarity with the market as well. Now, to understand the Brisbane story is really about going back to understand what has happened to Sydney and what has happened to Melbourne. Now, you might, before I talk about how Sydney and Melbourne set the stage for Brisbane to follow, or rather became the model which we see Brisbane growing towards. Let me first, help some of you understand. There will be a lot of words about, Brisbane is, going through maybe an oversupply in the city. Maybe some people will think that it should boom earlier but didn't, and there will be naysayers, and there will be people publishing news about upcoming booms, the new projects in Queen's Wharf and heaps of other projects that will kick in and make a difference to the city. Now, those are good points to consider, but I will say when doing property investing, one must always have a 5 to 7 years time frame. Now, you might hold it for a lifetime, or some of you might not hold it that long, but the point is, real estate is a long-term asset. And in long-term trading, right, or long-term investment, you always look at trends. You don't look at spikes, all right? Just the same as you would do for stocks, right? If you're trading a stock for long-term, you look at trend. That means the long-term trend. Is it an upside, downside trend? Is it a sunrise industry or a sunset industry? You don't look at spikes. Spikes meaning, suddenly the guy got a 1 million transaction and the stock price suddenly go up, and suddenly they lose the transaction and the stock price goes down. Those are the spikes, and the peaks and the troughs are but the journey of a trend, right? So you might have a trend, you might have spikes and peaks and troughs that goes this way, but the trend is a straight line up. So that's that's one of the very important investment concepts that sometimes property investors get loose in. They jump in for short-term, spikes, when the property requires them to hold long term, and short-term spikes always comes with short-term, falls, and that create a holding power situation. So similarly, when we look at some of the markets like Australia, the important thing is to understand a few trends about the key market, right? Understand about the long-term trend, and from there, then we decipher whether there is a product or there is a market that we want to participate in. Now, let me just name a trend for you before we go and talk about Brisbane. Now, one of the trends that Australia is seeing is that the domestic consumption of Australia is fairly weak, right? In any country where your domestic consumption is not strong, your economy is inevitably exposed to a lot of foreign influence. In other words, what happens in the world affects a lot, affects the economy in a big way. For example, Singapore is one of those situations as well, and that is why our government is calling for a 6.9 or even beyond that in terms of population. I know that we're not too enthusiastic about it, but the truth is, without that domestic consumption, there's generally a more unstable economy, right? So for Australia, we are looking at 24 million population on a piece of land that's about the size of US. Or if you adjust if you put them on it is about the size of the US. Now the problem is, within 24 million, the domestic consumption is not strong enough, and that is why Australia is pushing towards a 50 million population in the next 50 years or so. And to achieve that 50 million, let me assure you, you will not come from natural birth. And natural birth, their replacement rate for Australians currently stand at about 1.8, which means that they're not even replacing themselves. Okay, at about 2, you replace yourself, but at 1.8, you don't even replace your own population, not to mention grow the population. A large part of the population growth will then come from migrants, and migrants currently stands about 200 over 1,000, right? Slightly over 200,000 in terms of migrants into Australia on an annual basis. Can they take more? Of course, right? But not at the expense of diluting their culture, which is something that they didn't want to, and which is something that we overlooked in Singapore when they let in, when our government took the route of increasing our population. Now, in Australia, they are very careful about their culture, the preservation of their culture and their way of life, and I think that's a good thing. And what happens is, so they allow about 200, slightly over 200, 220, 240,000 migrants every year. That's the size of about one of the towns like Ang Mo Kio or Yishun. Every year, that amount of population just pops into Australia. Now, when the thing about Australia is this, when we say that about 200 over 1,000 arrives on their shore, these people are not low-income workers. Australia has a very strict migration policy. Either you are rich or you make a contribution to the society in terms of your skill set, right? So those are or you create a business that creates employment. Those are the 3 ways that you migrate into Australia. In which case, we are talking about people who decided to take roots, decided to be long-term there, and that's why they are migrating over there, right? Also, let me put it in this way, from a property perspective, in other words, you're going to have 200,000 over people looking for homes on an annual basis for the next 50 years. In fact, for the next years to come, as they reach their 50 million population, you're going to have additional 26 million people looking for housing. And these are not people that are low-income workers. These are people who the country has deemed them financially capable of taking care of themselves. And they are going to come in and they're going to need housing. So you can imagine there's still a lot of demand when it comes to housing demand. And that's one of the things why we like the Australian market as well, because it's fundamentally driven by demands and supply. Now, so the broad trend, we know migration is going to come in. In the middle, you might have currency fluctuations, you might have housing prices fluctuations, but we first determine that the need, the requirement, and the demand for housing is very strong and will be so in the next 50 years or so, right? So that's the first mega trend that we have to take note of, right? Second thing, interestingly, over the years, as you have seen, I think prior to 2008 or 2006, prior to that, you find that Australia is a relatively unknown country. Not that it's unknown, everybody know where it is, but nobody just want to go there. And it's not high up in a world standing, it's not significant in terms of the, when it comes to the international community. Now, the thing really took off. I wouldn't put it under, his credit, but the country really took off with Kevin Rudd, one of the most influential and one of the most foreign relation smart prime ministers of Australia. Went out there, spoke Chinese, spoke Mandarin to the Chinese, and started putting Australia on the world stage. Now, at the same time, when the GFC came around, rolled around in 07 and 08, right, that created a lot of upheavals. And Australia, by the fact that they are so disconnected from the rest of the world, did not suffer a significant fall in their economy, right? In fact, the government, in order to assure people that, hey, we're strong, hey, we're good, the government went ahead and says that we'll do a deposit guarantee. And it was only then, after Australia did a deposit guarantee, that Singapore followed suit and did a deposit guarantee as well. Now, what happened, with Kevin Rudd and with the GFC, propelled Australia to the top of the so-called safety harbour, safe harbour locations in terms of prices. Well, I like to, while the world says that the world has, while some may say that, yeah, Australia move themselves up in the financial ladder in terms of repute and standing, I like to say that, they are so boring that nothing happened to them. And that's, in times of crisis, boring is a good thing. And that's exactly what happened to Australia. It was so boring that they didn't go into crisis. They were comfortable. They tied through the entire GFC without going to recessions. And in fact, they have not had a recession for the last 25 years or so. And they have done fairly well in their economy. Now, ever since after that, Australia came into the international scene, right? So Australia becomes something of a significant. Everybody was talking about it. They started included in the G20, and it became something that people are more can endear themselves towards. Now, from there on, and then an interesting thing happened as well. Of course, already, the Australian Tourism Board capitalized on that situation and started promoting, Melbourne, Sydney as some of the key locations for tourism, and everybody got to know these two big cities. Now, from Singapore to China to India to any part of the world, Melbourne and Sydney has an international standing, right? And and one of the interesting things is that Melbourne went on to win the last Mercer Standard of Living Award, and basically they were rated as the best city to live in for the last 6 consecutive years. Now, to my knowledge, and I'm sure I'm fairly correct on that, no other city has ever done it for 6 consecutive years. Right? No other cities has ever done it. And in the last one, I believe Melbourne scored a near perfect score in terms of livability index that the study actually created. Right? So here's the interesting thing. I went around and asked a lot of people, especially Australians, asked them and say, hey guys, 6 years, Melbourne got the best city to live in, most livable city award. Now, let me ask you, about 6 years ago, prior to getting the award, my question is, was Melbourne any different from where Melbourne is today? And if you were to ask a lot of Australians, you'll find that their response would be not much, actually. Melbourne didn't change much. Okay, a lot more towers and skyscrapers went up in the city. But other than that, you don't, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of transport, in terms of lifestyle options and all that, there wasn't any significant change really. I mean, no theme park went up in Melbourne, no, humongous shopping or retail mixed use. Of course, there were few that upgrades and things like that went on, but you don't see a significant amount of new additions to the city. But one thing happened: the world took notice during the GFC, during the and after the GFC, people look at Australia and say, that's a great place. It's safe, it's sound, its culture is great, its policies are sensible, and it's a very stable country. And because the added notion of that Melbourne and Sydney are the two leading cities, these cities essentially became world class. Okay, now that's a very important trend, because the moment you become world class, that means you are getting international attention. You are getting attention from the international community, and the international community is saying, that's a great place, I want to live there. That's a great place, I want to do business there. That's a great place, I want to develop there. And on the last point, it is true. And what happens is, that whole feeling drove a lot of foreign investors into Melbourne, and we start to see skyscrapers that are built by Malaysians, by Singaporeans, by people from different, by the Chinese, and people from different countries started to develop in Melbourne, which led to today Melbourne being a little oversupplied on the city side and the city centre projects. Now, and price started to increase that way along the way as well. Now, here's the thing about it. International attention is very important, and the lesson to draw from there, right, is that a city becomes world-class when international attention is showered upon it, and when international guys started to take notice of it. And here's where things get interesting. We have monitored Brisbane for a long time. Now, Brisbane used to be a fairly sleepy country. Most of you will know Gold Coast. Some of you will know Sunshine Coast. Few will, in the past, make effort even to pass by Brisbane City itself. Okay, because there's really some years back, give it about 5 to 10 years back, Brisbane City was only that much bigger than Perth City. And if you have been to Perth City, you know what I mean. It's like blink and you miss it kind of thing, right? Brisbane City was slightly bigger, but not much bigger. But over the years, it began to change. In 2012 or so, 2012, 2013, it started hosting G20 meetings of the G20, and that was a big thing because it's the first time that Brisbane was hosting one of the international where world leaders converged onto Brisbane, and the city became buzzed with the notion of we are bringing Brisbane to the world, and if that's one of the G20 meetings that our very own Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was invited to be there as well as an observer. Now, so Brisbane started to get international attention at that point in time, and from there it began to get more and more, and we begin to see traction of more and more international people going there. The latest being Banyan Tree. Banyan Tree has picked a location to build its 6-star, one of the only 6-star service apartment in Australia, and guess what? It chose Kangaroo Point. And they're going to put a beautiful building right across the river from the city, and the building is going to look across the river and into the city itself, and that's where they're going to put their first one. Then we begin to see a lot of the other guys like Chow Tai Fook and so on and so forth coming into the big projects like Queen's Wharf and the Brisbane Life and so on and so forth. So a lot of the projects started kicking in. I'm going to give you a list of some of these projects. Queen's Wharf is a 9.4 hectare between Far East Consortium and the Chow Tai Fook. They're going to be 5 hotels, 3 residential towers, major shopping centers with F&B outlets and so on and so forth, a cinema and a hospitality school. Don't ask me about why the hospitality school, but it's part of the development as well, in partnership with TAFE. Queensland. We will deliver about 2,000 construction jobs and 8,000 ongoing jobs, adding about 4 billion to the gross state product, which is basically the GDP of Brisbane itself. We're going to have Brisbane Life, a 450 million project to deliver Brisbane's answer to New York Madison Square. You're going to have 17,000 seating, 70,000 seat world-class arena. For concerts and performances. You're going to have the Howard Smith Wharf, which is another $100 million project to create a riverside dining precinct and a dining and retail precinct. You're going to have Brisbane Quarters, $1 billion integrated mixed-use precinct in the heart of the city that will see Australians' purpose-built W Hotel, first W Hotel, and riverside dining, retail, with 40-story prime grade office tower, and so on and so forth. And not to mention that Brisbane Airport, already a 24/7 airport that operates busier than Melbourne or Sydney Airport, is undergoing a 10 years, $3.8 billion upgrade of the existing award-winning airport. And that includes and also the Brisbane Metro, a $1 billion high-frequency transport subway system. Now, we are not talking about these projects are just planned. These projects are actually running right now, are being undergoing construction, have obtained approval, and are going ahead already. You know how is it like? Some projects are announced, but they never get developed. Like the casino that was once being sold, that was supposed to happen in Cairns. That never went off, and honestly, we never expected it to. And these sort of developments are coming on board, and what they're doing is that they are bringing, and these developers, being foreign themselves, will bring that awareness of the city outside the city, beyond Brisbane itself. And when the world starts looking, when the world starts observing, when the world starts noticing, and it is what happened to Melbourne as well, right? Brisbane then becomes a world-class city. And that is why we are positive about Brisbane. We are not looking at the short-term ups and downs. This month it goes up, next month it goes down. New policies might create certain fluctuations and all that. But we are looking at a long-term trend, right? The long-term trend says that despite whatever that happens, all this project will propel Brisbane onto the next level, and the next level will likely include includes a lot of international participation in the growth of the city. Now, will it ever become a Melbourne and Sydney? Probably not. I mean, the reality is probably Sydney and Melbourne will always lead the race, right? But Brisbane is now playing catch up. And what do you mean by catch up? Let me give you some statistics. I mean, they are on the table here, and I'll love to show it to you. Let me see if I can do that and just expand it and put it right out here. If some of you all can see the data, and you will see that if you zoom in a little bit, I hope you can actually see it. But if you look at the data summary, what I did was, we went out there, we did some research, and we tried to compare some of the median prices on homes and units as of December last year, yes. And we tried to see the gap between the houses. And because Melbourne and Sydney has progressed so much, Brisbane is lagging severely behind. And because it's lagging severely behind, right, that present some very unique scenarios. Now, before I show it to you, let me just give you some idea before you start thinking that because of demand and supply or income differential situation, or because of unemployment rate. Essentially, the three states, the unemployment rate, there are differences, but we are talking about 1% difference, 1 to 1.5% difference. Even in when it comes to you're talking about unemployment, you're talking about vacancy. There's a difference, but it's not significant enough for us to be very concerned about it. But here's a very key differential. You would think that Sydney people earns a lot more than Brisbane people. Unfortunately, it is not the case. The average wage in Sydney is about 80,000, slightly over 80,000, and in Brisbane is about 76. Interestingly, Brisbane's average median income, right, annual income, is just slightly above Melbourne. So when you talk about affordability and price and the ability to pay rent, Brisbane people does have a significant advantage over Sydney and Melbourne, and that is reflected in the price as well. Let's look at some statistics. Now, you want to look at Sydney houses at 991,991, almost hitting a million, and to be honest, it has gone over a million recently already. We are just saying that these are December last year statistics. We're taking that as a 100% comparison. right? Melbourne houses are about 720, and you'll notice that Brisbane house stands at about 54% of Sydney price. Now, given there's only 5,000 difference between their wages, 54% difference in, a 46% difference in price is mind-boggling, right? So there's a significant lag in terms of price growth. Now, if you look at the units, right, there's about a 45% difference in price compared to Sydney as well. So as you look at some of these statistics, you begin to see that, hey, there's a real gap. There's a huge gap, and the wages are the same. So why would there be such a gap, right? And it's purely because of international participation. It's because the repute of the city is not there yet. Now, if you continue to look at the yield, right, gross yield, and you'll notice that the Brisbane's yield is significantly higher than the other two. Why? Because the price is cheaper. Naturally, doesn't mean that the people can pay less. They do pay less rent, but as a percentage of when did it jam? Is it still going on? Oh, sorry. Sorry, false alarm there. Right. Now, as a yield, you're going to see that despite because of the insignificant wage difference between the two, you see that the yield, people basically can pay more rent, right? And that is the situation right there. And you'll find that because of this whole situation, right, we then, based on these statistics, and say, what is the right product, what is the right market to go into in Australia right now, and we highly advocate the Brisbane market. Now, even within the Brisbane market, you'll find that the apartments in the city centre are sold at similar prices to Melbourne, and that is not what we like. But we like to look at the landed houses, and particularly townhouses. We are particularly and specifically positive about townhouses in and around the Brisbane city, within 5 to 12, 15 clicks of the city. And we think that there's a lot of potential in the townhouses. Now, looking at the statistic is one thing. If you were to go and look for a good suburb, let's say 5 click, within 5 click of the city, you'll find this statistic to be true. And the price point, remember, statistics are average. They are averaged out across the entire city. Okay? But if I were to specifically look at any of good suburb, let's say if I take a good suburb somewhere 5 click of the city in Brisbane, and I'm talking about a reputable suburb, you look at a townhouse in the range of about 600,000 to 700,000, right? If I look at a suburb 5 kilometers of the Melbourne CBD, and we're talking about good suburb, good size townhouse, we'll look at about 1.2 to 1.5 million. Right, that's the price. If you look at a good suburb 5 kilometers of the Sydney, and we're looking at a townhouse, provided you can find it, we are going to be looking at about 2.5 million, 2 to 2.5 million. Now you see the actual gap. Okay, of course, as you progress, as you proceed further out from the city, the price will change. The price differential does falls, right? Because the wages difference and various factors does drive that. But within the inner city suburbs, you will find that when it comes to townhouses, that lies the biggest price gap. Okay, and that is why at RunningStream at this point in time, we are very positive about townhouses in and around Brisbane. We think that there's a lot of upside if you are looking at that in relative to the other states. We also think that Brisbane is undergoing one of the most exciting times in its history. The city itself is on the verge of attaining a world-class status, and I'm sure if you research online, if you go Google on the web and talking about Brisbane world-class city, you'll find a lot of articles that talk about that as well. Particularly, you will talk about the developments that are ongoing, and what are potentials and what are areas and where are the jobs being created and so on and so forth. And I think that will be great research for you guys to carry on to do. Right. That's all we have for today. I hope that gives you a glimpse into the Australian property market of where it is today, as well as what it will become in the years to come. We are, as a company, very positive about Brisbane, to the fact that we are not only encouraging our clients to get on the Brisbane market, residential market, we are also encouraging our clients to participate in some of the development projects that we have out there. Yes, we also have a subsidiary based out of Melbourne that currently does developments, do small project development in Brisbane as well. And it's exciting times for us as we look at the Brisbane city. I think that's all for today. If you have any questions at all, simply feel free to post on the comments of this video if you watch it later. And I believe our guys will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Right, have a good rest of the Friday, and I'll see you again next Friday, 12:30 p.m. Right, thank you.